Alright, so in this video now, we're going to have a look at validation rules. Before that, quick check for what we know so far. So far, we know how to identify data types, we can explain the structure of a given database, and we know how to input data. Let's now look at validation rules and validation checks. Okay. So these are all the things you need to know when it comes to validation rules. There are more validation rules than this, but you only need to know these four for the exam. That's range check, presence check, type check, and length check. Let's head into Access now to see how these are all done. So before we get started in adding validation rules into this database, I just want to point out that I'm only going to perform each validation rule one time. What I want you to do when you see me perform a validation rule, create a validation rule, I want you to pause the video and then apply that validation rule to any other relevant cells. Okay, so let's get started with a range check. I'm going to open the superheroes table. Now, a range check is when you want the user to enter a data that fits within a particular range, normally through numbers or dates. We've got some numbers here in these fields here: speed, intelligence, wealth, charm, strength, and contacts. They all have a score between 0 to 10. So let's do a range check for that. I'm going to view, design view. Now, as I said before, I'm only going to do this for speed. I'm going to click on the speed field, then go under validation rule, down below it says general, validation rule. I'm just going to write between 0 and 10. Okay. Now I'm going to view, datasheet view, click yes, and click yes again. And now here you can see that it works, because let's say we go over to Spider-Man and we give him 12. When you leave, you get this error message: one or more values are prohibited by validation rule between 0 and 10, set for superheroes or speed. Enter value that the expression for this field can accept. Now, that's fine. We'll just put it back to 10 and you see it works. That message, though, I feel is not very user-friendly. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to change that message that pops up. Go over to Design View. Underneath Validation Rules is Validation Text. This is the error message that will appear if the data you enter doesn't fit within the range or doesn't fit to the validation rule. So I'm going to put the value you enter must be between 0 and 10. Go to View, Design View, Design View, Datasheet View, click Yes. Now, if we go to Spider-Man and I give him 100, enter. The value you enter must be between 0 and 10. Okay, no problem. 10. There we go. And that's it. That's how you do the range check. Feel free to pause the video here and then apply the range check to all the other suitable fields. Remember, this could exist in superheroes. You can also do it in the crimes, potentially, and you can do it in supervillains as well. Absolutely. Have a think about where you might choose to do it with crimes. Okay. In fact, I'm going to do one for crimes right now. I'm going to do one more with crimes, and that's number of victims. So go to View, Design View. Under number of victims, the validation rule is going to be greater than or equal to 0, because you can't have -1 victims, right? There cannot be less than 0 victims. Will be my validation text. Datasheet view. Okay. Now, if I did -2, there you go. Okay. So those are the different ways you can do range check. Do understand that, remember, range check doesn't have to be between two ranges, between two numbers. It could just be less than a number or greater than a number, or it could be just between two ranges. So that is range check. Okay, so now we know how to do a range check. Range check is maybe the most challenging out of the four, to be honest, but hopefully you understand how to do that one. If you don't, please go back and have a look. Let's now go back to Access and have a look at the remaining validation rules. Alright, so the next validation rule we look at is called a presence check. This is to make sure that an item data is entered into the field. We're going to do it with the superheroes field. Go into view, design view, and you want to think about which item data are very important to have. You might choose that actually every single field is very important, so therefore they should all be filled in, and that's absolutely fine. I'm going to do just the name field. You select the field, so I'm clicking name. Then when it says required, I'm going to make sure it says yes. Okay, then that is required. So what happens when you run this as a database, if you skip that field, you get an error message to tell you to enter data into that field. Pause the video here and feel free to apply a presence check to every item of data in your database. Next, I'm going to show you type check. So type check you've actually already done. It's with these data types. As soon as you apply a data type to a field, you get an error message if you enter a data type that doesn't exist or doesn't match with the data type that you've entered. So for example, with a number, I'll just show you right now, view, datasheet view. If I enter data caps America, if I enter cat, the value entered does not match the number data type in this column. Okay, but if I go, if I just undo that, so it's 7 again, you can see it's fine. It's a number, and it sees that is a number that I've entered. Okay, so that's a type check and a presence check, and of course a range check. The final validation we're looking for is a length check. Okay, this determines the length of the data that is in a field. So one example here, under Avenger ID, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got 5 characters. And we never want any more than 5 characters used as the Avenger ID. So go to View, Design View, click on Avenger ID. I'm going to change field size to 5. Now you'll see this error has occurred. You can't change the data type or field size of this field. It's part of one or more relationships. That means we have to get rid of the relationship first before we make this change. So I'm actually going to close that and I'm not going to save it. Go to Database Tools, go to Relationships, and I'm actually going to delete my relationships for now. We'll add them back after. Sometimes you can't make certain changes to your database if you have relationships in place. So I'm going to close that for now. Go into Superheroes, go into View, change Avenger ID to 5 as the field size. I'm going to test that out, click yes, yes. Now, if you watch this, AV0171, every time I try to enter any more characters, it stops me. It just stops me, okay, which is fantastic. That's what we want to happen. Okay, let's go to View, Design View. That's absolutely fine. I now want to make sure where Avengers ID is here as 5, I go to Crimes and turn Avengers ID into 5 as well. So Avengers ID, make that 5, just to make sure it's very clear to access that the two items of data are the same thing. Okay, of course, feel free to pause the video here and put any more length checks in place where you think it should be. The best place to put a length check really is for IDs, but you can also put it for names as well. So for example, under supervillains, a typical length for a name, you might go for maybe 30 characters. 255 per field is a large amount of data you're taking up. So yeah, if you think about 30 for a name, that's absolutely fine. Before I end this, I am going to remember to fix our relationships again. So Avengers ID to Avenger ID, tick enforce official integrity, click create. Oops, again, little mistake there. That box appeared because I broke my rule of having all these tables open. To show you the common mistakes that can occur when you are using access. So Avenger ID to Avenger ID, click that, create, and then Villain ID to Villain ID. Of course, only do this once you've fixed all your validation rules in place. Okay, and that's that for now. Okay, so from that we know that presence check is really easy. It's just simply looking for required and clicking yes. We know type check is something you do automatically when you select the data type, And we know that length check is when you determine how long an item of data can be. Okay, so that's it for validation rules. And that means we can now tick off validation rules, meaning we've only got 3 more to go. Join me in the next video to have a look at sorting data.